Hello, my name's Alan. Today we're going to talk about generations. And generations are only relevant for businesses that are multi-generational. So if your business isn't multi-generational, this probably won't interest you. The reason for generations is, the old rule of thumb is the first generation starts a business, second generation builds a business, third generation lives off the business, and the fourth generation farts it away. And that's a kind of a general rule of thumb. Now, it isn't always easy to decide what generation somebody's in. For instance, for myself, I started farming with my dad and my brother in 1971. When I was a kindergartner, my grandfather bought a farm and rented it to my parents. So from the time I was a kindergartner until the time I graduated from high school, which is when my grandfather died, my parents rented a farm. When I was a senior in high school, when they split up what my grandfather had, my father inherited 1/8 of a quarter section of land. He had 4 sisters and 3 brothers, so that was his share, and he paid the rest of them off. So that's how he got started. Now, would you call my grandpa first generation or my dad first generation? I would call my dad first generation. So that would make me and my brother second generation in the farming operation. From 1971 until 1984, we built the farming operation up to 16,000 acres. Then, due to the farm crisis and high interest rates and poor yields and a hailstorm, we lost most of it. All right, so that's how that business went. When that business was over, in a few years, my wife and I started a trucking business. So in the trucking business, we were actually the first generation. So in one business, I was second. Next business, I was first. Now, the only reason this really matters is just to know where you're at. The first generation on any business starts very low to the ground. And I mean, no cabins at the lake, no boats, not even very many vacations. You start out at the bottom, and you are not the richest people in town starting a business. And then by the time the second generation gets up to help, the second generation lives quite a bit better than the first generation. And the third generation lives better than that. One of the reasons that most family businesses fall apart in the fourth generation, or maybe the fifth, is that by the time the third generation has kids, those kids now are what I call poor little rich kids most of the time, and they grow up without much work ethic. Their parents didn't make them work. The first generation makes the second generation work from the time they're young. The second generation makes the third generation do some work, but maybe not as much. And by the time the fourth generation comes along, they're busy playing baseball or doing something else, which is all fine, makes no difference to me. The reason that is important to think about generations in a multi-generational business is, if you're the first generation, don't plan on getting very rich. If you're the second generation, plan on working like a dog. If you're the third generation, you're going to be in pretty good shape. And in your fourth generation, you're going to live it up and move and use it all up. So what happens is, say, take for instance, we're going to use a fictional farming operation. So we're going to call it Grandpa Inc. So Grandpa Inc., if a Grandpa Inc., I would be third generation. Now, as long as I'm happy being third generation, it's not a problem. But what if I want to be first generation Allen Farm Inc.? I don't want to be third generation Grandpa Farm. My father and I, or my siblings and I, are not going to get along because I really don't want to be in this business. I want to go start my own. And especially if I think that I am going to get my share out of the established business to start my own. It's not going to work. That's what I call ruining Christmas dinner. Now, another problem comes along is if I want to be first generation, but I am married to a lady who thinks she's third generation, and she's thinking cabin at the lake, and I'm thinking work like a dog. We are not going to get along very good. So not only do you need to know what generation you're in and figure out if you're happy in that generation, but your wife and your family also all need to know. Fair enough? I am not an accountant. I am not an attorney. If you're in business for yourself, you need to hire your own. Don't pay attention to me. But since I moved to the island 5 years ago, and we now live on North Padre Island, Texas, I am the Barefoot Businessman. Thank you for your time.